Loop 10. Getting to know. Alcohol is harmful to our bodies. This was something I had been taught a few times since I was a medical student. But even so, we chose to use alcohol to enhance the enjoyment of our party and ended up waking up in the morning with a headache that almost made us puke. I sat up and squinted. Next to me were Singh and Gap lying together on the bed. As for the girls, they had already left last night. I could not remember what happened last night at all, except for the fact that I was the one who brought the cake to sing along with Gap. Home, home, singing happy birthday, eating chim chum, and drinking liquor. And then everything after that was all a confusing mess. I got up, walked to the bathroom, and turned on the faucet to pour some water over my face to rid myself of sleepiness. I should not have drunk too much because I had to get up early in the morning. I grabbed a pair of my hair that had started to grow until it covered my eyes and thought about how I said I was going to cut my hair for the hundredth time and never had a chance. I walked out of the bathroom and slapped Gap, who was sleeping comfortably in bed with Sing in the head. Wake the hell up. You have the morning shift with me. Huh? Gap moaned instead of answering. He shook his head and continued to sleep. It was now 15 minutes past 7. If you don't wake up, I took drastic measures. I will tell the teacher that you performed poorly, and I will cut your elective course registration period down to just 1 month. Gap bounced up. Hey, you can't cut off my elective course selection period. Ha! I smiled. I knew Gap wanted to visit the emergency room of a hospital near the sea, followed by going abroad. If the period was cut short, this dream would be destroyed. This morning shift was unbelievably peaceful. I had time to sit and talk with Professor Sukrit, the emergency medicine doctor who was on duty today. My professor advised me to work in a provincial hospital because he was a former staff member at one of the most chaotic hospitals in the northeastern region in the country. I received a scholarship from my hometown hospital, therefore had to go to work in the manner that Professor Sukrit had been through. At a certain point, you'll ask yourself, why do we have to come and save a person who doesn't love life? Especially those who are drunk and still drive or take drugs to kill themselves. Maybe you'll be bored and unhappy with your job, the professor said with a serious expression. I listened to the teacher while checking the patient chart that extern sent me to check. But you must always think that even if some people don't love their own lives, they might have someone who loves them, or the person they love. Helping that person might affect many people, helping them to be happy. That's a good way of thinking. I'll try to use it on the days that I feel bad. I handed the chart back to the nurse. This patient can go home. Okay. The nurse who took my chart was Aim, the young nurse who was known as the fiercest in the ER. Even the professors feared her. But someone like her was desperately needed when we had to clash with a patient who would not listen. Oh, doctor, just now a call came in saying that a patient had fainted in the mall but is conscious now. Prepare for a case. Understood. I saluted Ames and turned to the professor. Professor, I'll go look at that case first. Professor Sukrit nodded. Okay, you can always consult me with anything. I got up and walked toward the grandma who was sitting on the bed talking to the male extern with a smiling face. When the extern saw me, he rushed to me to report the case. 72-year-old woman falling on her ankle 3 hours ago. The ankle can't handle weight. Feel pain when pressed on the outside ankle bone. I plan to send for a film to look at her ankles. Did she fall down first or faint first then fall? I turned to ask the extern. The extern looks a little stunned. Even though the case looks like it's just an accident, you must think about the physical disease that can be the cause as well. That way you won't miss anything. The sentence I said a moment ago made me feel like something was poking my mind. causing me to pause for a moment. The extern blinked at me confused. Then I'll go take some history again. I felt like I had forgotten something I couldn't think of. Yeah, try taking her history. If the grandma fainted first, measure her blood pressure in a sitting position and do an electrocardiogram as well. Yes, Pitin. Then the extern diligently turned to take the grandmother's history. I stood and looked at him, taking her history, with a feeling of unease rising in my chest. It was like when we left our houses and felt like we left something at home, even though we had already checked everything. 10 minutes later, an elderly male patient was pushed in, categorized as red by the triage, which represented the highest level of emergency. The male nurse triage ran after him, speaking loud and clear. The patient is unconscious. When a red case came in, the priority of the yellow, green, and white cases would be immediately reduced. This was what we called triage. It was a prioritization of emergency level using colored symbols for the most effective treatment. If anyone liked the first come, first serve system, then we would never have to discuss it in the ER. The flu waits. If there was someone whose heart stopped beating for that second, then I would have to go see the case with cardiac arrest first. If the patient complained about waiting for a long time without receiving treatment, the emergency room battle unit would be activated immediately. The person who received that position was Nurse Aim. Yeah, let me lead. Gup rushed in front of me quickly. I let him be the first to evaluate patients for training. Gap started by calling the patient to assess his consciousness and quickly felt the pulse when the patient did not respond. I can't feel his pulse. Start CPR. Suddenly, I felt like lightning had landed in the middle of my head. I put my hand up to my temples and stumbled backwards. Several scenes of uncommon events that popped into my head all at once made me feel dizzy. I looked up at what was happening in front of me. The nurse's assistant was climbing up to pump the patient's chest, and at the same time, there was another scene playing over it. It was a scene of a nurse pumping the heart of a young patient in a bed by the window of the CCU ward. The patient had a heart attack from an enlarged heart. That patient was Mai's boyfriend. That young man was Aunt Pang's son. Aunt Pang was a friend of my mother. The man used to drown in the sea and was rescued by my father. And he also liked to play football and basketball. The man liked to eat iced mocha with additional sugar and watch action hero movies. And he must be my boyfriend. Number six came back first. I said to myself and shook my head. Something in me had completely changed. I looked up at the clock. It's been almost 5 hours since I woke up at Sink's condominium. I was glad that I was right in this regard. If I chose to wake up on the day when Tol wanted to ask Mai to be his girlfriend, I would never make it in time. This was a week before Tol became my boyfriend. I would definitely win this time. My heart pounded as I was thinking this. If I was diligent enough, a week might be enough to win over someone's heart. But if the other party was a man, then I needed help. There were many male doctor friends of mine who liked men. I might need to consult them for a bit. Dr. Tin, won't you come and help me? Here came the ER warrior who fought with everyone, from the patient to the medical professors. Nurse Aim pushed me forward to go in and help Gap. I turned to look at her and smiled sweetly. Aim made a confused face. Just wait and watch me, the legendary lover, I said in a good mood and walked to join the group. Dr. Tin is crazy. Then I heard Aim's voice come into my ears. Toy blinked at me. Huh? Are you joking? I put my hands up to pay respect to the nurse in front of me. I'm not joking. Please help me. Toy looked at me in shock before grabbing my arm and dragging me to hide in the locker area for the nurses. I was waiting for Toy at the nurse's counter during the morning shift and said something that would shock everyone. Didn't Dr. Tin like women? Yes, but I really like that boy, I whispered. Toy massaged his eyebrows. I have just realized it too. I've always had a girlfriend, but this time it's not the same. I feel like I have to start all over again. My experiences probably won't work. Is the person you like gay? Toy asked me with a serious look. That person likes women. Doctor, Toy sounded upset. How can I help you then? How did you and your boyfriend meet? I asked eagerly. Toy made a slightly embarrassed face before he folded his arms inside. In those days, there weren't any Facebook or lines like nowadays. I met my boyfriend when I went to the academic training in other provinces. He was the hotel manager. After looking at each other for a moment, I went into his room with him that night. I choked. That that fast? Toy laughed at my reaction. After that, we kept talking on the phone. I was not very serious with this person. I also met up with some new guys too. But one day, he flew up to me and said that he liked me so much and asked me to be his boyfriend. I didn't agree at first. So, what did he do next? He kept trying. He bought me a lot of things, and I continued to play hard because I still wanted to have fun then. I didn't want to be attached to anyone yet. In the end, do you know when I finally gave in to him? Toy smiled. At that time, I was on duty from morning to afternoon. Both shifts were a mess. The patients were complaining, and their relatives were so hard to please. I went back home and cried. I thought I wanted to quit my nursing career at that time. I didn't know what made me call him because it was late at night already. And that night, he supported me and my mind so well that I felt I needed someone like this by my side. When he asked me again, I agreed right away. I smiled slightly. It's a heartwarming story. But don't forget that my boyfriend and I have been gay since the beginning. Toy looked at me and shook his head. In your case, you'll have to try it yourself. I really don't know what to suggest. Unless the guy you like is already bisexual, then you're lucky. It's not that hard to win him over. You yourself are quite good looking. I looked down at myself. So I can dress like I normally do when I flirt with a woman, right? I laughed. Don't dress too strangely. Just act normal, doctor. But personally, I like men who dress nicely. Lloyd glanced up at my long, unkempt hairstyle. Having a good haircut will help. I raised my hand and grabbed my strands. Okay, I was going to cut it as well. Anyway, doctor, are you sure you like men? Toy still seemed to not trust me. I don't think you are. I laughed a little. It doesn't matter because I liked him already. Then give it a try. It's like you chose the hardest level at the beginning of a game. If you're heartbroken, don't come crying to me. After finishing the conversation with Toy, I hurried out of the hospital and headed to a barber shop not far from here. I was a person who did not take excellent care of my hair and dress, not as much as when I had a girlfriend. After breaking up with Mind, I almost sold my soul to the emergency room. As a result, I became a man with a shabby face and no charm to this day. The hairstyle with the long bangs that cover my forehead was transformed into a cool undercut, which I did not choose. I gave the duty of designing my hairstyle to the barber. The only condition was that it matched my face shape. The young barber shaved a lot of area on my head and set the long section on top, sweeping it to one side. You look like a different person. So hot. Especially if we dye it a little. All the women will fall for you for sure. The barber looked so proud of her work. May I take a photo of you to post on our shop's page? I blinked and looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't want lots of women. Just one young man was enough. Uh, okay. I walked out of the hair salon with an unfamiliar feeling of coldness on my head. It was almost evening now. If I went to the business administrative building now, I might not be able to see him, which was not a problem. I would never directly crash into Tall's life anymore. I'd use a more slick approach. I walked to find a suitable corner and then turned on the front camera on my mobile phone that I rarely used. I took a selfie and uploaded it as my new profile picture, replacing the photo that I had been using since I was still an intern. I looked at the picture of myself that had just been uploaded. This look was quite nice. I should have had a hairstyle like this a long time ago. I spent about 10 seconds loving myself before putting my phone in my pocket. I was able to wake up successfully before Tol became my boyfriend. Now it was time for the number two. Call mom. To describe my mom, she was the head teacher of a private school with the position of a doctor's wife. Someone like my mother was very needed in my home. Without her, the house would be a mess. She was a strict teacher but got herself a husband who was a doctor who joked around all day and a son who was literally the copy of his father. I believed mom must have a terrible headache. What's up, son? Mother's voice answered the call. I smiled, relaxed. Mother's voice was one of the most pleasant sounds in the world. Morning, I said as I placed the car keys on the dining table in my condominium. I missed you a lot. Stop lying, said my mother in a harsh tone, which I was familiar with. I knew my mom liked to pretend to be fierce. Have you eaten? Yeah. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop before opening Facebook. Is father home? Yeah. She just came back from the health check and then complained that he was tired and it was hot. He's old but always overestimates his body. Mother complained. I heard my father say mumble something in the background. Mother, I want to ask you something. I immediately cut to the point while typing Doll's name into the Facebook search box. You used to take me to the beach with your friends, right? Mother was silent for a moment. Yes, my friend, Pam. Why do you suddenly ask about her? It's been a long time. You met her? Oh no, it just popped up in my mind. I sat and looked at Tall's profile picture before scrolling down the timeline. I did not see a picture of Tall and Mai on the timeline, and that made me feel relieved. Mom, tell me, where did you go then? Who were you going with? Then there were three of us and Aunt Pang with her husband and a little son. He was so cute. Oh! Then my mother made a sound as though she had just realized something. At that time, there was a bit of a mess. Tol, the son of Aunt Fang, drowned. It was lucky that your father helped him in time, so he recovered just fine. Talking about Pang makes me want to call her a little. We haven't talked in a long time either. What's Tol's first name? Ekarin Wichitkul. My mother's memory was always excellent, not like me and my father, who were doctors but had the brain of a goldfish. Mom helped Aunt Pang handle the process of being admitted into and getting out of the hospital, so I remembered. I heard that he has almost graduated now. Aunt Pang used to show me his picture. He's quite handsome. I want my son to be handsome like that too. I looked at the name of Doll's Facebook page. His first name and surname were the same as what my mother said. This is all I can do, Mom. Just get enough sleep. Always get a nice haircut and use the cream that I sent you, and you'll be handsome in no time. But you wouldn't do it. Some kind of crocodile aloe vera cream. Aloe vera! You haven't even unpacked the cream yet. Have you? I laughed. Yes, I'll try it. I understood my mother's desire for a handsome son, but in a case where your son was a doctor who studied for his specialty program in emergency medicine, it might be a little difficult. Okay, I just called to talk to you. That's all. Take care, Mom. If you don't use the cream, send it back. Don't waste it. I'll use it, I replied to make my mother feel at ease. I'm ending the call now, Mom. After hanging up, I immediately made friends with Doll on Facebook. I knew that someone who looked like Doll would have a long line of people asking to be friends with him on Facebook. I needed to stand out from the others by sending a message. Hello, my name is Tin. You may not remember me, but my mother and Aunt Pang are friends. I talked to my mother about that time I went to the beach when I was young, and she told me about you. I also want to know how you are doing now. I tried searching your name on Facebook and found it. Please add me as a friend. So slick. I leaned back and admired my work. This time would be the most reasonable journey of us getting to know each other ever. Tall would not wonder where I knew him from. If you do not believe me, go ask my mother. I really knew your name from my mother. 10 minutes later, there was a notification saying that I was already friends with Doll on Facebook. End of Loop 10, Getting to Know.